All right, so we're going to play the trailer for Flow to give you a reminder of the movie while we're doing our tech check.
Thank you, David. And I also wanted to thank Academy Software Foundation. We both feel really honored to be on the stage here.
Thank you.
Together with you guys. So, we already did.
Yeah. So, hello to all the open source human beings, and thank you for being here. We are Martin Upitis, and I'm Konstantins Visnevskis. The two technical artists of the Flow team. And so Flow is, I said probably many times, Flow is a feature-length film by director Konstantins about cats surviving the flood. It was premiered at Cannes, it won a Golden Globe and of course an Oscar, and up to date it has already received about 80 other prestigious awards. And so we are going to give some overview of the movie production pipeline, which is a bit unique for the industry, and as many believe, pointing in the direction of changes in said industry, including certain segmentation in larger productions towards more individual creators, facilitated by the technological advances in the open source software, being one of, if not the main of them. At the center of everything is director Konstantins, who probably did about a third of the work on the movie all by himself. There can be, and I'm sure there will be said a lot and written a lot about Gaines, because to explain success of his movie is literally to explain his personal approach to the work. Gaines comes from Latvia, and although Latvia does have its animation history and some acknowledged animation achievements, it does not have a commercial animation industry as such, which leads to not having anyone with a degree of some sort of personal accountability that could back up the opinion or the values or any proposition of what should be defined as great or quality in animation. As a result, it is also lack of trust in feasibility of funding. So only after his previous movie, Away, which he again single-handedly made on his personal laptop, he won the NSC award, he was able to secure any funding from the Latvian Motion Picture Foundation. So, the way Gaines managed the work and to motivate his team was very different to what usually gets practiced around the world, most often. Namely that every artist, as a performer, has at least some, if not overwhelming, anxiety about their work, and that it is often the case that this anxiety gets used as a pressure point to motivate the artist to perform. And as for Gaines' approach, in my experience, and also I've seen it again and again in other people around, that people initially get really perplexed by the creative freedom they are given. by not being put in a race or a contest, but rather seeing a real concrete examples that with any results of their work, there'll be an honest attempt made to move overall progress forwards, essentially offering a front row seat to the potential and effects of their own work, as if to say that you are here because of what you do, so you do you. And which seems obvious in hindsight, but this calm freedom makes one to explore what can actually they do and make them actually want to do that. It is about a way of letting people see the dream of the whole project through their personal details that they bring into it. So in essence, that's what basically inspiration means, which was a big drive for both of us. And because we were not used to large productions as that. So Flow Teams is exceptionally small for feature-length animation. The director, Gens Ilbalodis, who probably the team consisted of Matīs Kairja, who is
he's a genius, award-winning producer and director. He has 25 feature-length films already under his portfolio, and he's also a screenwriter and lecturer at the university, and he's done it at the age of 29 already.
Then there's me and Paul Bobrova, who was the character designer. We had Artur Gore, who was a concept artist for the environments. Leo Silipilsia, the animation director, and who worked together with Christoph Su, who is famous for his solutions in the animation. Then also we had Petris, Kristina, and Kristaps, who were our graphic designer, our set dresser, and CG generalist. And in July of 2023, Gens invited Richard Zalupe, a soundtrack composer for some of more prominent Latvian films, to have his take on the music that Gens wrote for his movie. Later, Richard rewrote the score and recorded it with Sinfonietta Riga Orchestra and he was the first one to receive the award, any of the awards for the movie as the award for the music.
So initially we were all working from our homes, which wasn't really ideal for the best way to work. And fortunately, we found offices. The office was actually a horse stable originally. Then when we moved in, it was a hostel, and it went through all kinds of interesting historic points during its time. But yeah, so in the end, we made it our home.
Yeah, and so for next 2 years after we moved into the office, we had tourists asking for directions almost daily because it was a hostel. And until on one of the conferences, a senior Google engineer from Google Maps gave a hint that maybe we could remove the hostel designation from our studio, which helped in about 2 months.
It was nice having guests coming over. Well, yeah, and it is not really, the Dreamwell studio is not really like a studio on its own. It's actually made from 5 smaller companies doing their own thing while the movie is not in progress. But yeah, I cannot really understate how important it was to work with such a talented group of people under the same roof. And a lot of them did, well, part of the people did VFX, they had an academic background, they were coders, programmers, some of them were actually from marketing and social media.
Yeah, so well, the collective insight covered most of potential useful questions, and the casual conversation at lunch usually turned into brought at least some insight into your work. And so at 2021, the pandemic hit. Then
Nothing to add there. It was actually quite okay because we were all introverts, and actually that was quite nice to actually be working inside, and workaholism is like, it was good for a movie.
So it became a tradition to that for some reason, probably because Mattis were very active socially, our studio became a place for the movie people to come to party 3 times a year, and on New Year's, spring and autumn. And but then after the New Year's, our heat pump broke down.
And we have winters in Latvia.
Yeah.
And imagine trying to work on a movie while your hands are freezing. But well, we had actually a fireplace in our office. That was really useful.
Yeah, but also at the time the heat pump broke down. The building was quite badly insulated, but we just began our simulations for the physics and rendering. So in the part of the studio where most of the computers were, the windows were open despite -15 outside and broken down heat pumps. So it was kind of the second floor didn't.
It wasn't that bad, and also the whole heat that came from the first floor where the simulations were happening actually came to the second floor. We were so we were fine. Gins initially started developing the idea of the movie in 2019. He made these before pitching, so imagine that you start working on a movie and you already have like a very specific art style and
Can we do the video? So a few years back, a feature of Geometry Nodes appeared in Blender. Geometry Nodes is a connected node tree-based system of data manipulation resembling that of Houdini, where combining nodes of different functions, one can produce or modify geometry or its data as well as animation, and to perform all kinds of simulations. Geometry nodes were used extensively during the project, and in this example, with the help of geometry nodes, I built a system of river weeds which could interact with the surface of the water, as well as a system that helped us guide the fishes, because there was plenty of them, and we couldn't really use boats and simulations because we needed to see all the trajectories at once, and to control them and have more procedural approach to the process. And cut? No? Cut? Yeah. So more of the fishes. And then another challenge was creating the feathers for the birds, as first was just to maintain the orientation and tilt with the body deformations. Later it was the problem of somewhat unusual to skinning of the characters, because it's okay for sample engines usually to pinch, but when you have a system of so prominent let's say fur on top of the mesh, any distortions in the geometry produce artifacts, so there was quite extensive system developed to fight that. And also, of course, they couldn't be reacting to wind and stuff like that. Cut? No. Yeah, also the shading was quite complicated for the feathers, so it was for the fur of the animals. The final approach, it was developed for quite a time, but the final approach was to store the direction of the mesh and then comb manually the direction where the fur will get displaced, and then do all the irregularities of the shape, and then project back the original direction of the mesh so that we can have somewhat smooth shading without all the irregularities affecting the toon style of the characters. And Then a significant part of overall work was water in general, and while Martin was flooding the rest of the world, my main task was to simulate the water interacting with animals. A big part of work was joining those big and small water effects together. The interaction simulation was done using flip fluids for Blender, in which resolution is a valuable resource, meaning that many simulations had been combined together.
So, yeah, and talking about water, this is my part. Gaines actually came to me with a few requirements. He needed water that can be... so water in a movie would be a combination of puddles, rivers, floods, and open waters. And... yeah, and another requirement was it has to be interactive, so it has to interact with the objects in the movie, and water also have to be run in real time, mostly. So I decided to use techniques that you would more commonly use in computer games, because my my background was making water for computer games, and also it's actually kind of went together with the whole idea of rendering in Eevee, which was in its way a computer game engine. And yeah, and, I tested quite a lot of these smaller tests before I started actually working on the project itself, just to see if it's all possible. And luckily, geometry nodes came along, and it's really like paved the way and made all this possible. Another part was, yeah, Gins actually sent me a clip from Revenant where DiCaprio gets into water and the camera the camera is in the water and going through all the waves. And he said, "Okay, I need that," and it's like, okay, that's quite a lot. Because that is not usual to have a camera that can go under and above water, especially in real time. And another part that actually was the most fun for me was the whole visuals. I like water, I like being in water and around water and like looking at water. And yeah, I did quite a lot of research to get things right in Blender. One thing that was important, yeah, was the whole transition from above water to below water, and have all the interactions with the objects and wet materials looking correct, and also one part that was important was the particle effects. They give depth and sensation of the distance under the water, and yeah, once all of those smaller systems were working together, I created a toolset in geometry nodes, so Gins and the team themselves could actually use the tool instead of myself. Otherwise, I would not like finish the whole movie by myself, adding the water to every scene. Yeah, some of the places Gins was the director was actually putting the effects and lighting into the movie itself, and was taking care of multiple hats at the same time, like being a composer, being a director, being an animator, and being also the lighting director. This is a breakdown for... So yeah, here you can see the animatic that Gins made, and I had to make the water look better during that moment, and I tried all kinds of different existing methods in Blender. This one was analytic waves, just like a sinus wave, and then I tried 2.5D simulation just to see if maybe that is good enough, and all kinds of tricks that I would usually use if I would make it in a computer game. And later I just used the flip fluids because they generally look the best. The interesting part was that the lower resolution, the preview version, was the one that Gins approved, maybe because the whole movie is kind of like, it does have computer game visual aesthetics. So
yeah, so the interactions with character of the water were done by me. This is the shot, the opening shot of the movie, where nobody has seen the other side of the cat, so I just choose to share.
Yeah, so Konstantins also worked on water. He did the splashes, and I was the one who was, well, my job was to weld it together with my analytic water waves, which means they're more like mathematically created, while Konstantins was simulating with particles. This is again animatic. This is what Gins gave it to me, and he said to make it better. And once again, I went through all of the process of trying different techniques and ping-ponging between Gins and trying to find the good enough solution, because you have to remember we were under tight budget, under tight budget, yeah, of time and money. So we had to like find the sweet spot. Not too good, not too bad. Just enough that that delivers the message that cat is in danger. Also, for me, it was important to get the sensation of being underwater, right? I'm actually myself afraid of water. While I love water, I'm afraid of swimming. But this also gave me probably a right to work on this movie, because Kat is also afraid of water.
Yeah, so for this shot, the flip fluid simulations were quite there is the resource that has to be conserved, like the resolution of the simulation. So, for example, in this shot, the actual depth of water is about 10 to 20 centimeters, just to conserve on water. Which was one of the many tricks and hacks we had to do to keep it out of cloud compute, to just basically live within the budget. Then also the rigs of the animals were later redone by the French animation team, but this is my original one, which I developed coming from the commercial movies, commercial industry, where usually you have to create something which works for 2 to 3 shots, but does it perfectly. And in the movie, of course, this approach is not ideal, because you can't just create rigs based on incoming comments, as there will be literally thousands of them, and so the burden of the versioning becomes just too huge. As you can see, the script that I wrote for just applying the changes automatically, because it was just getting too much of work. So I was quite happy when the Leo's animation team decided that maybe they could give it a go on their own.
Yeah, so Konstantins was fired. Here you could see how the shots were progressing, and it is probably also important to mention that the movie was ready at any stage. Even before we started to work on the project, the movie was watchable. And whenever the budget grew, also the requirements grew, and we could add new features, add new eye candy through it. And yeah, these are the shots from the movie, from the water perspective of the movie. And yeah, and also it was quite liberating working for Gins. He actually allowed me to do a lot of things, sometimes even that weren't necessary for film. And he just said, "Oh well, let's try a bit, like one step further, try something new, and see if it fits in the movie." One part that was a challenge initially was he said that he wants the water to look non-photorealistic. The whole movie is, it has a specific visual style. It's not physically accurate, and I work with lighting that is physically accurate lighting. And once he said that he wants the water to look animated. I was like, okay, how to do that? But after that, I realized, well, water reflects everything. So if the movie is NPR, then also the reflections are the reflections would be reflecting the world around. So I wasn't that scared anymore to try to make the water look less realistic. Also, if you get all the physical nuances right, the water seems more believable. And yeah, I mean, mixing together non-photorealistic with physically accurate is actually, it does work. It's probably also worth to mention that lighting was done completely by Gintz. He was like taking care and was like controlling everything. There was no ambient occlusion, no global illumination.
Yeah, so basically during the shader development, the shaders incorporated a system where we created a shadow vignetting highlight points that could be distributed around the scene, so that basically when we received the final animation from the French animation team, Gintz manually relit all of the scenes in the movie so that the composition was well balanced, and he could do that because all the work that was done beforehand. So the work on the simulations and their welding and the final rendering was happening just up to, I think, 2 days before.
Yeah, I sent the last clip 2 days before the premiere.
And the whole Latvian team was brought to the ceremony, and most got to stage despite the tradition of limited amount of people, meaning mostly directors and producers getting to the stage.
This is a shot from Latvia. That's Latvian Hollywood. We made it.
The movie got a great reception around the world. It won the mentioned awards. And so the impact lately, it is often complained that the large movie industry experiences some rough times, not being economists or representing any of large studios. We can't really represent that, but some say the hardship brings also an opportunity, and the potential of independent productions suddenly rising is slowly building up, meaning as it was with maturation of social media and video hosting platforms, for example, for a long time now, it has catalyzed some rise of social media creators, and that although that rarely translates to some sort of independent production, it does create the facilities for just average person to do so. And so people, just as people often are finding some purpose in their social media lives, there's a chance they could find that in making movies. And as Flow has proven that current zero threshold availability of software is not a compromise anymore due to ever-widening availability of devices. It's stuck on repeat that now it's the easiest time to make movies for like 20 or 30 years. And so same definitely now applies to computer animation. And so Flow has definitely put the animation on the table for Latvia now, so it probably opened a lot of doors for the Latvian animators around the world, and I hope that we will see some examples of that in their experiments. And so...
yeah, there's a small part, just to say that we went to Blender conference just the year the movie started, and with the sole purpose to talk to developers about the geometry nodes. We knew that it's going to be important for the movie, but we didn't know where it was going, so we made it the geometry nodes meeting there. This is animator Elodie with Leo, who is the director of animation, me and Konstantins in Blender conference. And this is probably, for me at least, one of the best prizes I could get. You know, the movie got all of the prizes, but for me and probably also for Konstantins, this is the real deal.
So when planning to speak here, after listening to what we potentially had to say, there was a suggestion to maybe mention some benefits of open source. And so at first that sounded a bit strange. I mean, we, like many do now, have largely grown up on open source. Everything we do, we'd say, would inherently be about its benefits, benefits of functionality, community availability, integratability. And the future are not something to prove anymore. They are the facts that we base our daily work on. But then again, on a second thought, it turns out not everyone is a 3D computer graphics artist working in Blender yet. So there's a bit of on the benefits. So any software has its place, but those are the people behind that create the actual merit. And open source has its own set of inherent properties that push towards those merits, be it due to availability to new ideas and expertise, or due to the amount of eyes on the source or shared knowledge and awareness. Open source is the best way to advance the technology. All else being equal, it is destined to become the most used. Consequently, those advancing the open source take the lead of the innovation and give the most resilient chance for their innovation to thrive. In particular today, that can be said about software in image production industry, which changed hugely to what it was 20 years ago. Today, Blender is the primary means of being introduced to 3D creation to millions around the world, to the point of someplace, Blender meaning more Blender than the kitchen appliance. And
that is true in Latvia.
For smaller productions that doesn't have their own software ecosystems, it's often harder to use closed software because of the lack of resources to satisfy the compatibility needs. So luckily, some of the biggest players do realize the potential and themselves invest into the compatible future, which brings the hope that of the even brighter future to all of us. So a word of appreciation should be said on the state of some of the open source standards involving Academy Software Foundation. It's hard to come up with an example of these solving some particular problems, not because they are lacking, but it's just how quickly we all get used to those being solved. We didn't use the APIs provided that the foundation supports, but we did use the software that is based on those APIs. Well, Blender uses all of them. Of course, it was greatly appreciated. And okay, I lost the track. Yeah. No.
What's happening? Where's my mouse? Here.
Yes, for example, OpenColor.io, Blender uses internally. Now it is how we could get the color correction, which was matching that of other software, and same goes for OpenXR, where that allowed us to be compatible. OpenVDB to import this simulation, and most of all OpenUSD, which was used for all the trees in the movie, and a lot of other animation which had to be somehow shared with other software. Same as goes for the Alembic, and the animation team heavily relied on Kitsu for production tracking and Gadget for asset manager. So would we do anything differently? Gins answered this question in many interviews, which can be boiled down to I will avoid water.
Well, based on the results, I mean, I wouldn't change a thing. It did quite well.
And yeah, so I probably underestimated the sheer volume of animation which could make rigs a bit different, but giving all the result, I think it did just fine. And so, yeah. Yeah, so also there were, we had the approach of having a single specialist for a single task, mostly giving this small team, but which paid off quite big time because of all the production. And I guess we ran out of time some 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, some while ago. But thank you.